Hey all, welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile, and today I have for you guys my good friend's Exodia deck. Now this focuses on the Legendary Exodia Incarnate, and now that the fact that Sangan isn't on the ban list at all, it's at 3, so that just expired this new deck, and of course there's also support from Obliterate, another card that came out with Exodia Incarnate, and some other cool tech cards to kind of go along with that. So obviously there is no extra deck. This deck does not focus on Xyz, Synchro, or Fusion Summoning, or even Link Summoning for that matter, if we're going to go into that realm. As well as the side deck isn't really a conventional side deck where this basically just has different numbers of different cards in the main deck, and some other alternative choices you could possibly do instead of some choices that we made in this deck. So the side deck is kind of situational, where the main deck really doesn't need to be altered in any fashion, just whatever your personal preferences, go with that. You won't be changing it up during game matches or anything like that. You're going to keep pretty much the same deck going the whole time. So let's jump right into this deck profile and we can kind of see what the power of the deck is. So obviously, just as the Exodia deck has always been, your main focus is to assemble the 5 pieces of Exodia into your hand, and when in doing so, you win the duel. Head, the left arm, the right leg, the left leg, and the right arm, all assembling together to form Exodia. Now, that's fairly traditional, but one of the new cards, the Exodia Incarnate here, must first be special summoned by tributing one Forbidden One monster, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. So the only way to bring this out is for you to summon a piece of Exodia and tribute it to special summon the Incarnate itself. Now, this card gains 1,000 attack for each Forbidden One monster in your graveyard. So that could mean potentially anywhere from 0 to 5,000 attack points at any given time, which at 5,000 attack points is quite a powerful boss monster. Now, the second power of this card is once per turn, during your end phase, you can add one Forbidden One monster from your graveyard to your hand. So you're just able to just add one right back to your hand at the end of each of your turns. And then the final power of this card is when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. That's important because sometimes it'll be removed by other effects, obviously. But when it's destroyed by battle, you can reveal any number of Forbidden One monsters in your hand, and if you do, draw one card for each. So maybe you have 2, 3 cards. That's a +2 or 3 when this card leaves the field due to battle. Which, you know, with 0 defense, you could just put it in defense position and kind of wait for your opponent to take it out, too. It's fairly easy that way. So yeah, this is the powerful boss monster deck, but it also complements your main strategy of, you know, winning with Exodia. It's a very powerful card, and it's a great addition for the deck. Now, a tech card we have is Kari Bandit. So during the end phase, if this card was normal summoned this turn, you contribute it, so you don't have to worry about keeping it on the field, and then excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and you can add one excavated spell or trap card to your hand. Also, send the remaining cards to the graveyard. So the main point about this is that you can look for a spell and trap card that you need, and you're able to possibly get some more pieces of Exodia to the graveyard. So just another draw power card, and it allows you to get your resources into the graveyard faster, so you can start thinning your deck quicker. And then of course we got Sangan back at 3. Now this card, when it's sent from the field to the graveyard for any reason, you can add one monster with 1,500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. That's the only thing you gotta know. You can only use 1 per turn though, remember that. If you set 2 Sangans, well, you're only gonna be getting 1 off that turn. But just a reminder, Sangan, super powerful. You want to grab your Exodia to your hand, and maybe you don't have any targets of Exodia, you can add any monster in your deck to your hand, because they all have less than 1,500 attack, including the Incarnate itself. So of course that's at 3, and then we also have 3 Cyber Valleys. Now, this is actually a pretty popular card to sub out with Card D, depending on the matchup. I think actually more frequently, Card D is a better choice, because Cyber Valley is kind of outdated. The reason why Cyber Dragon's in this main deck one is because you can banish it and another card to draw 2 cards, which is really powerful. But it's not necessarily needed, and it also allows you to maybe add a piece of Exodia that's in the graveyard back to the top of your deck if you need. Maybe you have only one piece of just a vanilla piece of Exodia that you need to try and get back onto the top of your deck, and you don't have Dark Factory Mass Production, which by the way needs 2 targets for it to be active. So that's why Cyber Valley is in here. I think it's still pretty good, but that's kind of situational. Card D would be the one you would maybe swap out all 3 Sire Valleys for and put in 3 Card Ds. That's just another idea. But something that you should keep, Battle Fader, that should be a 3. You aren't really keeping monsters on the field all that frequently, and you want to be able to stop battle phases. This is a really great hand trap for this deck. It stops the entire battle phase when it's special summoned. All you have to do is be declared in a direct attack against, but it banishes itself when it leaves the field. But the point about having Battle Fader instead of like Swift Scarecrow or something like that is Battle Fader allows you another monster on the field during the next turn as a little bit more protection. So of course at 3, and then we have 1 Magical Planter. Now the point of this card is for you to send one of your continuous trap cards you control to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. And if you can see in the side deck, we do have another one, and that's because your main other combo card in the deck, Obliterate, benefits from when it's destroyed. Along with, you also have Spiritual Swords Revealing Light, which is another continuous trap that you may want to get rid of to draw 2 cards. So at least 1 Magical Planter is needed. Next up, we got 1 Day Apiece, of course, because it's at 1, and this is just a great card just to draw a card, and then you won't be taking any damage in the next turn. So that's pretty key, because it saves you from anything. Your opponent won't be able to do anything, because they can't inflict you with effect damage, they cannot deal you damage through an attack, anything like that. You're safe. Then obviously an Upstart Goblin. It's only at 1, sadly so. This would have been a much better deck if it was at 3. But it's at 1, that's fine. You don't really care if your opponent gains a lot of life points, because still your main win condition is the 5 pieces of Exodia to instant win. Next up we got 1 Dark World Dealings. This there's 2 other ones in the side deck. I recommend having this at 1 to 2. That's because you get a draw card, then you get to discard a card, and you don't really mind discarding a piece of Exodia, because that's the power of the Exodia engine in this deck. You can add cards back to your hand fairly easily. And to help with that, we have 2 Dark Factories of Mass Production. Now this card allows you to target 2 normal monsters in your graveyard and add those both back to your hand. So it's way better than Monster Reincarnation, where you have to discard cards. Obviously Reinforcement the Army isn't going to work for this deck, because Exodias are spellcasters. And that's really great just to grab those 2 pieces back. But the problem is you need 2. If you only have 1, you can't use this card. That's key. So you have to have 2. And there's another reason why we don't run Foolish Burial is because of Obliterate's power. And we're going to get into that. But till then we have 3 Pot of Dualities. Now this is awesome because you get to pick the exact card you need off the top 3 cards of your deck to add to your hand. So it's basically like a 1 day apiece, but instead of trading protection, you're getting a little bit more choice in the matter. And of course we run that at 3 because it's just a really nice card, but you can only activate 1 per turn, and you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. So that's kind of important to know, that you won't be able to bring out your Incarnate the turn you use Pot of Duality. But I still think it's worth running at 3, and we also run 3 copies of Hand Destruction. So this is another card that kind of works with the engine of you don't mind really discarding cards. Like if I were to take out anything, I would maybe take out 1 Hand Destruction, but we do have 3 right now. But Hand Destruction, you have to send 2 cards from your hand to the graveyard to use this card effect, and then you get to draw 2 cards. So that's kind of risky there, but it is also a quick play spell, so don't forget that. It's another choice you have with the card, but mostly you're just going to be playing that when you have maybe 2 pieces of Exodia in your hand. You're like, oh, it's fine, I'll just ditch those, and you draw 2 cards, or you maybe have a spell or trap card in your hand that's kind of dead right now, and you just want to get rid of that as well. So yeah, maybe take that down to 2 if you want to sub in anything from the side deck, but right now we have it at 3. Now we go on to our trap lineup, the protection of the deck. We have Wabaku times 3. Of course you want to run Wabaku. You take no battle damage from your opponent's monsters this turn. Super key. And then your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So another added layer of protection. Now the mirror to this would be Threatening Roar. And Threatening Roar just stops all battles from occurring. Like your opponent cannot declare an attack this turn. So that's another cool card to kind of use. Threatening Roar, I think, in more senses is a little bit better. Because sometimes your opponents have abilities. If your monster declared an attack, they can use it, one of their effects. So that's why I think Threatening Roar is pretty good. I recommend Threatening Roar, but Wabaku is just another side of that coin. Works for the same purpose, and it works usually just as well. So of course we run that at 3, and we also run 3 Reckless Greets. The most important thing to know about this card is that if you use more than 1 in the same turn, the effect stack in the sense that you gotta draw 2 cards, but the draw losses don't stack. So you could pop maybe 2 or 3, draw 4 or 6 cards, and then starting at that turn, the next 2 draw phases are skipped. Not the next 4, not the next 6. So you could possibly get 6 cards and only lose 2 draw phases. So that's kind of the power of Reckless Greed. You don't really want to use one by itself unless you absolutely need to. You want to use 2 at least in the same turn. And then moving on to the most important card in the deck for support, we have Obliterate. So Obliterate, you can target one monster in the field, and then you can send a piece of the Forbidden One from either your hand or the deck to the graveyard. Now you can also send Exodia, so you could actually send the Exodia Incarnate as another choice if you need to. That is deck thinning, so it's not a bad idea. I usually like to keep them in the deck just in case you want to bring them out, but that's also an option. And if you do that, you can return that target that you selected, the monster in the field, to the hand. So awesome, powerful like that. But then, if this card is sent from the spell and trap card zone, but also if this card is sent from the spell or trap card zone to the graveyard, you can target one Forbidden One monster or Exodia card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So that's another awesome way for you to use Magical Planters. So use its effect to ditch a piece, use Magical Planters, grab that piece back thanks to Obliterate going away, and then you also get to draw another 2 card because of Magical Planters effect. So Obliterate is awesome protection, and it's awesome movement of the Exodia pieces around. So of course you're going to run that at 3, and then the final card on the deck is just another way of protection. So once per attack, when an opponent's monsters declare an attack, you can pay 1,000 life points and negate that attack. So it's a negation for 1,000 life points, which I mean you don't have a lot of. You may not be you're not gaining life points back, but you do have 8,000 life points, and you're going to be spending a lot of life points on protection and everything. You basically just want to have this card on the field to stop your opponent's monsters from attacking you, but you can also send this away with Magical Planter to draw 2 cards, and then this card's second effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard, and then this turn, your opponent's monsters cannot attack directly, so you can just leave your field blank, you can place Spiritual Swords during your opponent's turn, and then they won't be able to attack you directly with that, and you still get the Magical Planters effect, which is why I think it might benefit from having 2 Magical Planters in the deck, but at least 1 for sure. You want to be able to have the ability to remove your own cards to the graveyard effectively, and you also get the bonus off from it. So that is the main monster deck. Let's move on to the side deck and talk about some of those choices. So I already mentioned the Cards are a good alternative to swap out for the Cyber Valleys, but then we have another interesting engine. So basically use Future Fusion to ditch 2 pieces of Exodia, the 2 normal monster pieces, in order to fusion summon, during all the sequence and everything, the first of the dragons. So this card cannot be destroyed by battle except by battle with a normal monster, and is unaffected by other monster effects. So this acts as just a giant wall to stop you from being hit, and it also works to send pieces of Exodia to the graveyard. So that's something really cool that you could try to work into the deck. I think it's awesome. I think it's a great way of protection. But if your opponent can take out Future Fusion, then you kind of lose that protection, but you still were able to get 2 pieces of Exodia to the graveyard. And like I said, here's another Magical Planter, 2 extra Dark World dealings for those draws and discard effects. It's basically just like a slower hand destruction. I like this a little bit more because it's a little bit easier to move 1 piece to the graveyard. Like you might not have 2 pieces, but Dark World dealings, another good choice. You could play with the numbers of Dark World dealings versus hand destructions to kind of see what suits you best. We also have the Monster Reincarnation, because sometimes you're just 1 card away from grabbing an Exodia back and winning the duel. So Monster Reincarnation, it's a card that you may not want to run, but it's in there just in case. There's enough cards in your deck, if you play your cards right, to get any monster card back that you need to win the duel. That being either effect or normal. Then we have 1 more Dark Factory Mass Reduction, because sometimes you just keep discarding, and maybe you need to use the effect of Dark Factory Mass Reduction more than just 2 times, even though you only should have 2 targets, 2 sets of normal monsters each, 2 pairings. And then we have the 3 Threatening Roars I mentioned, instead of the Wabakus that are potentially whatever your preference is. And then finally just another Spiritual Swords or Revealing Light, just because maybe you had an extra planter in your deck and maybe you just want to toss another Spiritual Sword so you see it more often. So that ends the deck profile, but I just wanted to take a quick second and talk a little bit about something that's kind of worrying about this deck. Now this deck is a competitive deck, do not get me wrong. It's a fun deck to play 100%, but if your opponent can shut it down, if your opponent can counter this deck, there's really nothing you can do about it. Dark Law really hinders this deck majorly, and you don't see Dark Law running around as often as you did, but any deck that banishes cards from the graveyard, any card that would normally be sent to the graveyard is then banished instead, well, that cripples the Exodia completely. A lot of the engines in this deck don't work then. You can't send to the graveyard and effectively grab the cards back. So many cards that are out there in the meta right now can shut this deck down, but we're seeing less and less of them, at least now with the True Dracos and everything like that running around. There's no, like when Dark Law was running around, this deck was not a viable choice. It's more viable now, and it's a fun deck to play, maybe locals with friends, depending on like the scale of the duel. But I just wanted to make sure that was known, that so many things can shut this deck down and make it completely unusable to some degree. So that's just a little warning that I had. But ultimately, this is a very powerful deck. It's a very cheap deck to build, actually. It's only, like, especially for us when we were looking at it, we found everything at a very reasonable price. It was all easy to get, especially the Exodia cards and the Exodia Incarnate and everything. Those aren't expensive cards, so you could easily get them. The Magical Planter, that's a little bit on the pricey side. Of course, the Upstart's a little bit on the pricey side. But other than that, the cards were easy enough to get. And this is a really great deck for anyone who's kind of getting back into the game. It's a great deck for them to learn on. It's a fun deck. It's a nostalgia-filled deck. And like I keep saying, it is competitive. It's just very much dependent on the matchup. So I hope this was informative. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, just let me know in the comment section below. I hope to catch you in the next one. And as always, peace.